I'm Loretta Nominati.
Hi, Loretta.
Hi, everybody. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. If anyone has here represents a media agency, please contact Jeff R. The members of the North Central Indiana area of Narcotics Anonymous welcome you to the 4th Annual We Grow with Love Convention. We would like to thank you for joining us in the celebration of recovery. We are deeply grateful to Narcotics Anonymous and find great joy in being able to express our gratitude here with you, our family. In Narcotics Anonymous, we are certain that when we come here to share our lives and our love with each other, a miracle happens. Our recovery takes hard work, courage, and commitment. Those are the things that carry us through as we seek the spiritual growth that comes from working the 12 steps. Never alone, we do this together and for each other, knowing that we need each other, because more than anything else, we grow with love. The purpose to the basic text begins. The full fruit of a labor of love lives in the harvest, and that always comes in its right season. For us, our season has come. Do you have a just?
I think you would go get it. Turn off for mine.
I'll have Angie come up and read the Just for Day meditation book.
Hi, I'm Angie. I'm an addict.
Hi, Angie.
Hi, buddy. May 26th, the power in the group. Our understanding of a higher power is up to us. We can call it the group, the program, or we can call it God, from basic text, page 24. Many of us have a hard time with the idea of a higher power until we fully accept the depth of our own powerlessness over addiction. Once we do, most of us are at least willing to consider seeking the help of some power greater than our disease. The first practical exposure many of us have to that kind of power is in the NA group. Perhaps that's where we should start in developing our own understanding of God. One evidence of the power in the group is the unconditional love shown when NA members help one another without expectation of reward. The group's collective experience in recovery is itself a power greater than our own, for the group has practical knowledge of what works and what doesn't. And the fact that addicts keep coming to NA meetings day after day is a demonstration of the presence of a higher power, some attractive, caring force at work that helps addicts stay clean and grow. All these things are evidence of a power that can be found in NA groups. When we look around with an open mind, each of us will be able to identify other signs of that power. It doesn't matter if we call it God, a higher power, or anything else, just as long as we find a way to incorporate that power into our daily lives. Just for a day, I'll open my eyes and mind to signs of a power that exists in my NA group. I will call upon that power to help me stay clean.
Thanks,
Sure.
Okay. Now we have our first speaker, Chuck.
My name's Chuck. I'm an addict.
Hey, Chuck.
Hi, buddy. I would like to welcome you all to this workshop. What is it about? Drugs or addiction? I know for me today the addiction has been going pretty well. I've been wanting to run and just hide and not come here because I'm not used to sharing at meetings like this, especially sitting up here in front of everybody. But I know for me when I first came around, it was about the drugs. The drugs is what brought me here. At least that's what I thought in my mind for a long time. The drugs is what brought me here, and it took me a long time. I don't know, first couple of years or so that I was around. That's the reason why I thought I was here, is because I had a drug problem. And after being around for a while, I realized that once the drugs were gone, I still had all them same problems. I still had the mental obsession, and I still had a lot of other things that I had to do. And then the addiction started coming in. I can be compulsive and obsessive on a lot of things, without drugs. I don't know. Like I said, I get lost for a lot of words up here. But the addiction for me out there is the self-hatred, the self-loathing, the things that I did, for my addiction. I stole and all that stuff. And the drugs, they were always there, but so was the thinking, the mental obsession, and that's the craziness. Like I said, I'm not real good at this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk no 20 minutes, that's for sure. But I get real nervous. I like listening. But I keep coming around. I keep learning. That's what's part of. For me, that's what it's about. Is to learn. Once I ever think that I got addiction whipped, I know that I end up back out there. Because I know for me today that I am an addict and I will always be an addict. But I don't have to die from the disease of addiction. I can die in recovery, and that's what's real neat about it. And that's what you people have taught me. I don't have to use today. I don't have to use the drugs. But I got to keep on working on the addiction. It don't only deal with the drugs. It deals with relationships. Because I can obsess and compulse on relationships and get everything blown completely out of proportion. And I can do that with meetings. I can become a control freak and think that the meeting that I go to is my meeting, and it's not my meeting. I'm just one person. I'm just one member. But there is times my home group. For a while, I used to think that if I didn't show up for my home group, that the home group wouldn't show up. I thought I was it, and that's part of my addiction. I come to a realization that and I'm real happy now that I can actually go and not go to that meeting now, and go to the next meeting, and they tell me about the meeting, and it happened, just because I wasn't there, they still had a meeting, and that's real good. But I do that with service work. I like service work. 2 years ago, one of my sponsees bought me a little pen. It was here. It said Service Junkie, because I do like to, I like to be involved, and sometimes I can take that to extreme, and I get so involved that we were sitting over there earlier today, and I was talking about, sometimes, you got to be able to say no. That's one thing I learned in the program, When I first came around, they always said never say no. But now I know that there is times that you got to say no. Whenever you got so much stuff going on in your mind, and in your program that you ain't working on yourself, it's time to say no to something and start working on yourself again. Because for me, what it'll do is it'll take me back out. I'll start working on everyone else and everything else, and I forget about working on myself. And I'll let myself go to hell. And that's just all the addiction. It's all, part of it, It is an ongoing process for me. It's a daily process. I got to do it every day. I like talking to people every day, one way or another, I don't know if I helped anyone. I don't know if I said anything of any importance, but I know I'm glad I'm here. I like this camp out. I know there's drugs anywhere and everywhere, and I'll be willing to say that there's probably some here, if you chose to go looking for them. But that's one thing I don't do today. I don't have to look for them no more. But I don't know. I'm for lost of words, so I'll be quiet and I'll turn it over to Skip.
I'm an addict. My name is Skip.
Hi, Skip.
Gratefully recovering through the grace of God. Then they program many people. I don't know. I mean, when I heard this topic, first thing that came to my mind is both. You know what I mean? Because for me, that's what it's about. I mean, singing too loud in the choir and drinking too much Kool-Aid didn't bring me here. Drugs brought me here, and I realized that. But I also realized that I had this disease long before I picked up. I can remember as a child, man, growing up and all the little kids, all the boys in the neighborhood had little toy soldiers, little green soldiers, They used to come in hundreds of these long bags, And we used to all get together, and bring out our toy soldiers, And one day I picked up a comic book and I seen a whole chest. And the chest had the Army, the Navy, the Marines. I mean, there was like thousands of tanks and airplanes and shit in this, and I had to have it. And I brought it into the neighborhood, man. I set it down in the yard, and I was the man, you know what I mean? And that's when my disease started to kick in there, and it progressed. And I seen the progression of the disease as I started to get obsessed and compulsive with different things. And when I found the substance, wet, dry, gel, whatever it was, it flew. And that's when this disease progressed really fast, for me, I'm grateful for that because it brought me to these rooms, and today, that's why when I say I'm a grateful recovering addict, I truly mean that, because I'm grateful even for the bad times, because my higher power saw through His grace to bring me to these rooms, you know, and I'll be eternally grateful for that because it let me meet all you beautiful people, you know, and the life I was living, I don't think I wouldn't have had that opportunity, you know. But the disease of addiction runs deep. It's a disease of blame. You know, when I came here, I was pointing fingers. I was like John Wayne, you know, with that 6-shooter. I was pointing fingers at everybody. You know, it was the police's fault. It was my parents. I was from a dysfunctional home, and you know, I had all these. You know, I heard these terms too when I was going to these treatments. I heard these terms. You know, I said, yeah, I'm that. You know, and I'm that. You know, and for a long time, I didn't know what I was. You know, and when I came to these rooms, I found out, you know, that yes, I was an addict. I had a dis-ease, you know. I had this dis-ease about myself, and that's why I used, you know, that it wasn't the drugs, it was my reaction to the drugs that made me an addict. You know, and I learned a lot of things in these rooms, you know, and that the substance was a dead substance. You know, there could be a pile of them sitting in the middle of the floor, and it's dead. It's a dead substance. It has no life, you know. But once I pick it up, I give it life. I give it my own, you know, and it controls me. You know, I looked up, I can remember, you know, working the first step with a sponsor telling me, you know, get a dictionary, Skip, look up the word addiction. You know, and the one that I seen that fit where I was at was a slave to a habit. And that's what I had become, a slave to a habit that was killing me, you know, on a payment plan. You know, so I looked at it and I read Who's an Addict. You know, and that chapter opened up, you know, a lot of doors for me because, you know, it taught me about this disease, you know, that it was a disease of mind, body, and spirit. You know, and you know, that this, you know, the basic text, it talks about this disease is spiritual by nature, so this book is going to deal with spiritual matters. You know, and this disease I can't see, you know, but I can feel it, you know, and it's with me everywhere I go, you know, and it lives primarily in between these ears, you know what I mean, this bad neighborhood, you know what I mean, that's in between these ears, that's where it lives, you know, and you know, when I start rationalizing and thinking, you know what I mean, my disease thrives on that, you know. This disease is incurable. You know, I didn't come here to get cured. I came here to get better. You know, I know I'll never be cured. It's something that I carry with me for the rest of my life. I know it's another act with Sharon. I can become obsessed with anything. You know, anything that makes me feel good, I can become obsessed with. You know, don't take much. You know, and once I start, I can't stop. You know, and I know this disease is real. You know, I don't need any proof. I don't need any newcomer coming here and telling me, you know, the shit's still out there or something like that. Man, I got shit in my life today, you know, that I got to deal with, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, you know, I'm grateful I'm not there, you know, to a certain extent. But as I stay clean in this program, my awareness grows, you know, my responsibilities grow, you know, it's like when I came in here, you know, I had a little monkey on my back, and now, you know, it's a gorilla, you know, and this disease, what I've learned is that the disease progresses even in recovery. You know, that if I'm not doing something about my recovery on a daily basis, this disease starts to catch up. The symptoms come back, and before you know it, I'm acting out, you know, and you know, next thing you know, I'm going to start looking for those drugs again. You know, and I'm not here to bullshit nobody. I love to get high. I love it. You know, I love the feelings. I love the lifestyle. I love a lot of things about getting high, but the bullshit that came with it. You know, the waking up in jail, you know what I mean? You know, the waking up in institutions and hospitals, you know, getting stitched up. You know, I can remember walking in my door, man, and seeing all my shit outside on the porch again, you know. And you know, I'm tired of that, man. It was that new way of life, you know, and it says in our basic text that abstinence is the foundation for our new way of life. You know, so I got to stop using at some point in order to find this new way of life. You know, that promise they give us. You know, freedom from active addiction and a new way to live. You know, and that's what caught me, you know, the freedom from active addiction. I said, yeah, well, maybe, you know what I mean? But the new way to live is what really caught me, you know, because that's what I wanted. I wanted a new, I was tired of living the way I was living, you know, and this program gave me that promise, you know, the only promise, you know. But I know this disease, it wants to kill us, you know, but it makes us as miserable as possible before it does it. You know, it don't want us in these rooms talking about recovery. You know, it don't want me on the phone calling another addict. you know, this disease still talks to me, you know, and sometimes it comes in a flesh form, you know what I mean? And it uses people as well as, you know, my recovery does, you know, and I try not to feed it today. You know, it gets real hard at times, you know, not to do that. But, you know, I try my best, and with the help of a higher power, you know, I know that I can get through anything, you know. But I know this program works, you know, and if I apply these spiritual principles, it can be arrested, you know, and I'm grateful for that, you know. And it's only through coming to these rooms and listening to you people, you know, tell me about the disease of addiction. Because they told me when I came here, man, you know, we look at the first step. And I put drugs there for a long time, you know, and they told me, you know, if you come to a program, man, or you go somewhere, find out what it's about, you know. Don't just take my word for it, man. Pick up that basic text and find out, you know, am I giving you my opinion, or am I giving you, you know, what the program is teaching me, you know, in our literature, you know, and I done that, you know what I mean, and you know, so I'm grateful that I was given that opportunity. You know, the first step, you know, when they formulated the steps and they looked at the first step, you know, and they did what's called a 10 strike. It's called ultimately successful definition, I believe. And it was in that first step where they looked at the disease of addiction, because they looked at addicts and said, man, this is a deeper disease of feelings and emotions. You know what I mean? So instead of putting a substance there, because that was leaving a loophole for an addict, said, well, if I don't use this, I'll be okay, you know. So they didn't do that for us. They came up with this 10 strike. They said the disease of addiction, and we're knocking out all the loopholes, but it's all inclusive. Mood altering substances, you know. And you know, I was grateful to learn about that. You know what I mean? Because I was saying, damn, you know, if I would have just been a substance, I'd have been all right. You know what I mean? Because, you know, I could stop doing this, but I didn't want to give up reefer. You know what I mean? I like doing reefer. You know what I mean? And I could have a beer watching the game or something, you know, and you know, as long as I don't do that, you know, that crack, you know, that's what fucking my life up. And for a lot of us, that's the loophole that we get, you know, and with the disease of addiction, it doesn't give us that, you know. So I'm grateful for that they said it was all inclusive. You know, I share this, you know, I stopped smoking, and I was getting a lot of pain in that area, and usually that's what motivates me, you know, to stop anything. And you know, I apply these spiritual principles, and you know, it's gonna be 2 years that I stopped smoking, you know. And recently I gave up coffee, you know, and that was a struggle, you know. And you know, I'm just sharing this because I tell you that there's hope in these rooms, you know what I mean, that you don't have to be a slave to a habit anymore. And I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes, and you know, if I do, you know, I apologize, but you know, I'm sharing my story, and this is me, you know. I bought one of them Speedway cups, you know what I mean, the 20-ounce big mug like they give out here, and I couldn't pass a Speedway without getting a cup of coffee. You know, then they put in the cappuccino machines, you know, and I was like, okay, and then I stick my cup under the machine, and as soon as I seen the water start coming out, I pull it out, you know, and I stick it back in there and get just the raw cappuccino, you know, and I knew that my disease had really kicked in that area, you know what I mean? And what this program gives me is an awareness. You know, the awareness grows in this program that I say, hey, you can apply the same spiritual principles that you did with the substance in a lot of areas of your life to this area, and you can beat this, you know. And I put it down, man, and I haven't had a cup of coffee, man. It's going about 6 or 7 months. I try not to keep count, you know what I mean? You know, I know it's been a while, you know, and I've been to a few conventions, and I've had the urge, believe me, I love the smell of coffee, you know. But when I came here, I never even drank coffee. I started drinking coffee in this fellowship. I didn't smoke, and I held cigarettes, but I inhaled my first cigarette in a meeting. You know, and just to show you how this disease, you know, it jumps ship, you know what I mean, and it switches, you know, and those are things that I picked up those habits in here, you know, and but I'm grateful my higher powers took away those obsessions, you know, and you know, I know there's a lot of work that I gotta do, you know, but I know when I go out on faith and it works, you know, that faith becomes trust, you know, and that I can use it in any area. And I share those things to give people hope, because I heard people share the rooms with me and it gave me hope, you know, and it became a problem, you know, and today it's not, You know, today I'm in the solution. You know, and it's only through this program and you beautiful people. But I'm grateful to be here. This is my 4th year. This is an annual thing for me, and this place is very special to me. You know, all these familiar faces. You guys are like family, believe me. You know, I love coming here. I love, growing with love, I guess. You know, I sit back and I always share this. You know, in my first meeting, at my first time here, there was a speaker and a speaker was sharing, and I was crying, man. I mean, I was bawling, you know, after the meeting, and I remember him sharing. He said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Because it's over." You know, it was last speaker, and he said, "It's never over. You know, you take a little bit of this everywhere you go." You know, and it made a lot of sense, and today I do that. You know, I can close my eyes, man. I'm on that lake. You know, believe me. You know, a lot of peace and serenity here. You know, I don't know. I'm just grateful to be here again. I'd like to wish you all love, peace, and recovery. I'll keep coming back.
Thanks, Skip.
Before we open the floor for sharing, I need to remind everyone that you are being taped. If you do not wish to be taped, please let me know so that we can turn the machine off. Okay, does anybody like to come up and share?
My name's Sharon. I'm an addict. Last Wednesday, I completed my first step with my sponsor, and I felt really good after I did that. And she's like, "Well, now you can start step 2 and 3, and then after you do 2 and 3, you can do 1, 2, and 3 all over again." And I'm like, "Wow." Well, I'm looking for a new way of life, and they say in order to achieve that, you have to work the steps. So I'm willing to work the steps. And I just want to say I've got a lot out of this retreat, and I'm really glad to be here. And that's it.
I'm Loretta, and I'm an addict. I can relate with what Skip said about cigarettes and coffee and working the program with quitting, because I've been doing that too. I quit smoking April 10th, and I've been working the program with that. And it's people say, "How do you quit smoking? How can you stand here with people that are smoking and you're not smoking?" But I just sit here and think, I'm not going to do that. I've been this long. I'm not going to smoke a cigarette. But I quit drinking coffee too. Now I'm just doing it like 1 cup in the morning or 2 cups in the morning, and maybe 1 at a meeting. No, I don't do any at a meeting anymore. But you know, that's like you said. I'll do 2. Next thing I know, I'll be drinking all day again. But I can relate with that. I work the program with everything. I take fat burners, and I can see that. My boyfriend gets on me about it. You know, he said, if you don't, it makes me feel good. You know, like he said with the drugs. You know, you like the feeling. And I heard someone say this morning the same thing, exact same words. Like the feeling, it was just the consequences. And then I got myself on with these fat burners too, but sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but sometimes they make me have more energy at work too, you know. Some of them don't. So I got to watch that too. It's just the addiction of everything. It does go. And you know, being in a program like that, you can see that stuff now. And just have to keep a watch on things. It's like I said, I have a disease, and my 10-year-old said, "You have a disease, Mom, you gonna die?" I said, no, as long as I don't drink or do drugs, I'll be fine. And watch myself. That's all I have. Anyone else?
Hey family, I'm an addict named Michael. And I said I wasn't going to share anymore. I told myself in my mind, but I just got to tell this one story. But before I tell the story, drugs definitely brought me to the tables of Narcotics Anonymous. Ain't no doubt about it. Ultimately, God brought me here, but it was because of the problems that drugs presented in my life that I did come to the tables of NA. And somebody was talking about writing the steps out. And I remember a long time ago, my sponsor gave me some book I read, and it had in there a definition of addiction, which I love. And in the basic text of NA, it has a definition of addiction, which talks about basically it's comprised of three things: the mental obsession, the physical compulsion, and the total self-centeredness. But the definition that I love about addiction is an abnormal relationship with an object or event that has life-threatening consequences. And when I heard that, that just rocked my world. I was like, hey. But, and I like that because, see, I know addiction manifests in every area of my life, and even in It Works on Why, it says something like, Narcotics Anonymous not only treats the apparent symptoms, but it treats every aspect of the disease of addiction. And I said, now this is all right. About a week or two before this past Valentine's Day, me and my girlfriend, we broke up. And let me say that, if you all have an NA journal, and you got some secrets and some skeletons and some bones in there, trust me, lock it up in a safe deposit box, because information is there is invaluable. Now on with the story. Me and my girl broke up right before Valentine's Day, and the reason was she had the heat at her house had went out or something. So I said, come on, baby, you can stay at my place, you know. And so she took it upon herself. I had left for work to, you know, go rumbling through my little stuff. And I figured there was no reason for me to hide anything from me. And anyway, she came across my NA journal and read some things in there. They were very painful to her. And it answered a lot of questions about me that she had asked of me that I would never be honest enough to share with her. And I was very mad about that, but we broke up. But anyway, Valentine's Day came around, and I was feeling a little bit down and sad, and I'm like, man, now, this ain't right. So, you know me, I'm going to fix it, you know. Hell, I don't have this one, so I'll go get another one. So I bought a little flower and some candy and a card for a young lady I work with and gave it to her. And, oh, she thought that was nice, and she bought me a card and brought it to me. And we had made a date for that night to go to some kind of spiritual speaker or something. And so anyway, she gave me her address and, you know, said, we'll come by at such and such a time. So, hell, I went to find a house, but I couldn't find it. And it began to snow that night, and I started getting depressed. And I'm like, oh, shit, here we go again. She trying to play on me or something. And I had all of these sad feelings about the woman that I just broke up with. And I said, now this woman is just trying to jerk me around. And then I realized, fuck it, I got a pocket full of money. And so I got in my car and I headed for the mall. And the feeling that I had going to the mall was just the same feeling I got when I used to go to the dope house. That anxiety and the tension and the feeling. I pulled up at the mall, and as soon as I went in the store, wow, eureka. You know, my whole mood had changed. It got me a shopping cart, and I wheeled around through the store, and my blood pressure was racing, and I picked up a coat, and then I got another coat, and I got some shirts, and I said, well, I need a suit. And before I knew it, I had $800 worth of merchandise in that buggy. And I put it in layaway. And I came out of the store, and the thrill was gone. And what it reminded me of is when I used to go chase after drugs, after I would cop, after I would use, the depression, the remorse, the guilt, or whatever that I would feel, after jacking off all of my money, after it really set into me, you got loved ones at home waiting for you. I had those same kind of feelings after going shopping. And really all I'm trying to say is that I know the disease of addiction manifests in a lot of areas of my life. Money is mind and mood altering for me. It gave me an instant feeling of gratification for that moment. But after I copped, it was all over with, and I still had to deal with my girlfriend is gone. The other girl I want to get with, I ain't getting with her, so I still got all of these feelings over here that I wanted to try to deal with. And I know no matter what I try to replace or cover up my feelings with, the feelings are still going to be there after I get through with whatever. I love peach cobbler. Man, there have been periods of time where I'd have to go get peach cobbler 5 and 6 days out the week. Fried chicken wings, the same way. I ought to be weighing 300 pounds as much chicken wings as peach cobbler that I eat. But That's just how the disease manifests. You know, I was sharing with my sponsor, he was sharing with me not too long ago, how he started going shopping once he got clean. And I do that today. I will go to the store with the intent to buy a suit. And of course, they'll have a bargain on sale, and I got to get 3 or 4 suits. And then the unmanageability kicks in with the money. Yeah, I need to be paying the utilities and the car note, but, you know, I'm buying all of this merchandise over here, so I just know that addiction, it manifests in all areas of my life, and it really makes it unmanageable for me at the level of managing money. And although I know unmanageability isn't just about the money, but it's also about my feelings and emotions, which a lot of times I can't even identify in recovery. And like a member was saying earlier, I too believe I was an addict before I ever picked up any drugs, because I've had abnormal relationships with objects and events. Whether it was little Hot Wheels cars. You know, I remember being in high school and we'd get in somebody's pickup truck and we'd go down the street and there was a hill. And, you know, whoever would be driving would like go about 60 or 70 miles an hour. So when you get to the top of the hill, you get that whoo feeling. and I remember that, but then it took me back to being a little baby, you know, and we all do it. You pick up a little baby and throw the little baby in there. Whee! And they, you know, the bottom drops out of their stomach and they just laugh and fall out and everything. That same feeling. I used to get that feeling before I picked up any drugs. You know, and again, I believe that I was addict before I picked up anything because I never really knew how to deal with my feelings. I would feel, whatever it was I would feel, I wouldn't address it. I would feel shame. I'd feel guilt or anger, and I wouldn't express it. I would stuff it all in. And today I'm just now starting to learn how to identify some feelings. See, because I love to suppress them with whatever. Be it sex. I can obsess in that area. And I know if I continue to have abnormal relationships in the area of sex, that can be life-threatening. Hell, I might catch a disease. I might have a heart attack. Anything could happen. Gambling can be the same thing. Where I live at, they're getting ready to bring about 4 damn gambler boats in. I'm not a gambler yet. I don't know. I might become one. But hell, if I get hooked up in that, shit, I'm going to be borrowing money from the juice man and maxing out all my credit cards, and then the depression and all of that comes in. I may want to kill myself, or somebody else may want to kill me. So I do understand how addiction manifests in every area of my life, and it runs rampant. And I just want to share this before I close, particularly in the area of sex, that I remember one time being around the tables of NA, and I looked around the room, and there was about this many people, same number of women, and I slept with about 5 or 6 of those women there. And I just held my head down because I began to feel shame. And one of the things I found out about me and this disease, the reason that I've had so many relationships with women, and most of them I've never closed, they're still open stories, I haven't written the last chapter, was because I'm immature and I'm dishonest. And for me, running from woman to woman, I'm just trying to cover up, get some instant gratification, and not deal with that feeling, not deal with that person on a one-on-one level. Because it takes discipline, it takes some sacrifice, and most of all, honesty, which, hell, I'm honest that I got a problem with drugs, and that's probably as far as it goes. And maybe a few other things, but when it comes to opposite sex, I'm all fucked up in that area. But I saw that I'd been with about 5 or 6 women at this meeting, and I felt real shameful about it. And I realized that it was just like switching drugs. Instead of drinking, I was smoking. Instead of smoking, I was snorting. Instead of snorting, I was shooting. And that's what I was doing with all these women. You know, when it really got time to get down to talk about some real feelings, well, how do you really feel about me? See ya. And I'm off to the next one. You know, and I love it just for the day, I think it is December the 6th. Oh, man, that's wonderful. Love is like an elixir. You know, the feelings and the intensity you get when you're getting ready to go into a new relationship, just like you're getting ready to go cop the dope. You know, the intensity that you get. And I would get that every time I would get with a new woman. And after I cop, it's all gone. Ain't no more thrill, ain't no more intensity, ain't no more feeling. So hell, what I do? Move on to the next one. Don't close it out, just keep on going. And again, I know if I continue to do that, I will die. Hell, if I don't kill me, one of them women might decide to kill me. You know, but I just wanted to share that. But, you know, there's no doubt in my mind the drugs brought me to the tables of Narcotics Anonymous, and with that, I keep coming back.
I'm out of call Howard. I'm truly grateful to be here. This is a very good topic, Kelly. Thank my higher power for giving me the strength and the knowledge just to be here, and you people for being here for me. This particular workshop and topic, it touched on a lot of different things. I heard a lot of good things. It definitely was the drugs for me that brought me here. It was the event that I couldn't stop. That was the thing for me. I know some of my partners, they could go and they can get one, and they would be all right, But see, I couldn't get one, So I knew I needed some type of professional help because I couldn't do it on my own. And when I went to professional help, they gave me this prescription, and NA was a part of it, And I'm truly grateful for that. I was hearing things about these compulsive behaviors and the aspect of addiction. I tried other fellowships, and that word addiction wasn't in it, And something was missing from the recovery process. I know alcohol from that other fellowship and that dash. See, I had to place everything in that dash when I went to that other fellowship. And I was like, this is not right. And then this other fellowship, they just had cocaine. Oh, yeah, I loved cocaine at one point, but then it had a lot of other gaps in it. But when I came up with this word addiction in Narcotics Anonymous, that was the word for me, because I knew that I had more than one problem. I definitely had more than one problem. And the basic text summed it up. I too went searching into the dictionary and encyclopedia and all that for the right answer, and I never did get it. And my sponsor said, just stay in your basic text, just study your basic text and keep it simple. You complicating it, And that I was. And when I got into that mental part of the disease of addiction and the physical part, and they explained to me about the compulsion and the obsession and the total self-centeredness, I was like, hey, it was here all the time, And when I came here, I still sought professional help on the outside, and they gave me some other books, and it kind of coincided with what I was going through in that first step, because I stayed there for a long time, that first step. And it was like, they told me that I had a lot of compulsive behaviors that I had to look out for, and Mike touched on a lot of them. It was like sex and gambling and thrill-seeking and overspending, all those things they told me I had to look out for, but they told me I had to watch out for drugs, and I still use them, So I had to go through those things, For the newer member, you're the most important person. If you can just sit down and listen, you might not have to go through those things that we went through, Those are why we share our experiences. They started recovering around the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous before they had the basic text, because people learned how to listen, and when they shared, they could take things that were shared and help another addict not to use different things, And I know that's how this fellowship revolves, And touching on a few more things, it was like it was this equation that was in this other professional book that I used, and it touched up on a lot of things for me. It was like I could take any one of those compulsive behaviors and get some immediate gratification, and then I would also get some later pain, Every time I replaced one of those, whether it be gambling, whether it be sex, whether it be overspending or thrill-seeking, and each one of those could cause my demise. I could die from each one and every one of those, So I would have to look out for those. But they didn't say don't do them, It's a way that we can do all things, Even overeating was one of them, But we still have to eat, So it's a way that you can do these things. I know just for the sex part of it, as being an addiction, they were saying like doing it in a loving and caring and safe way. So I had to learn how to do these things. This has truly been a process for me, because I didn't know how to do hardly any of these things the right way, So it was truly a learning experience. And I'm still learning, you know. I'm still in this process, and it's the process of recovery, you know. And I'm glad I picked up them first ones, and I'm glad I didn't stop, because if I had stopped, maybe I'd still be using, you know. And this has truly given me some freedom, you know. And by me getting this freedom, I'm learning how to live, you know, the correct way, you know. I'm truly learning, and that's something very positive and constructive in my life, because I never had that in my life, you know. And I never would have had it in my life had I not walked into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you for letting me share.
Hi family, my name is April and I'm an addict. I'm working on taking suggestions today. When I think about my addiction and when I stopped using drugs, one of the things that I saw right away, I already knew that I was pretty materialistic, but I knew that addiction manifests itself mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. But one of the things that happened when I stopped using drugs is I saw that compulsive obsessive disorder in the area of shopping just take off. And the reason why I talk about it is because it can get your lights turned off. It can get you put out of a place. It's a lot of areas it can affect in the end that you don't think about when you're there doling out that cash for whatever. I remember my job, we had all these shirts, and it wasn't okay or enough for me to have a red one and a blue one. I want the yellow, the pink, the black. No, 2 blacks and 2 navy blues, because those colors, when you wash them so many times, they get dull. And I knew by the next year I was going to want the same colors again. So I brought 2 of those, you know, and I just found that it was not okay to have one of anything. I wanted every color. It was like a rainbow array, you know, and that's what I would do. And I got to thinking, you know, I said, this is crazy. And I went to a convention and I took my 5 leather coats and my wool double-breasted trench, and I put that all in the trunk. I said, I feel like I am boosting. I'm going to get in trouble pulling out all this stuff, you know, out of the trunk. What is going on? You know, and I was seeing immediately that it was manifesting itself in the areas of shopping, and I wasn't thinking about the consequences until I had to pay the price, you know. And I said, wow, where was all of this when I was little? Where was it all? When did it start? And I can remember using with my niece, and I've had some revelations about my relationship with her, but we used to have what I call dime bags, and that's because Kool-Aid only cost $0.10 a packet, and we would put it in this little plastic bag and fill it up with sugar, and we would use that all day long, you know, and we would be getting our little sugar buzz going on. And I remember popcorn, and we used to sit up and see who could take the longest to eat it, and mine would be gone like that, you know. I could never just do one of anything. I always had to have it all till it was gone. I remember one time for attention, we got up on top of the stairs, and the test was who would get the most attention after we got at the bottom of the stairs. So we rolled down the stairs head first. And here come Mama and our sisters, and they scooping us up, and we're crying. And at the end, it's like, I had 3 people, you only got 2, you know. Little trips like that. And I'm talking about little obsessive behavior at an early age. And I was sitting up here listening to these people share. It's like, damn, I have been an addict for a long time. Ooh-wee. I gotta keep coming back, because none of this occurred to me before this workshop. I was just sitting here, it's like, man, I can go back to being just little and having a disorder that manifests itself mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You know, that's kind of painful, you know, and we kind of laugh at that today, but like I said, I never thought about that until I heard these other people share. You know, and working the steps, I tell my sponsees, you know, if you want to stop using, Narcotics Anonymous guarantees you that you can stop using if you apply the principles of the program. But if you want to change, you're going to have to apply the steps. Abstinence and change can be two different things. You know, I'm real impressed where, I don't know where she went, but there's a lady here. You know, if you're working the steps early in your recovery, and there's different opinions about that, but it's all about change. And as far as I'm concerned, the sooner the better. You know, I took a year before I was even willing to approach the steps. It was a year before I even had a basic text because I was too afraid to ask somebody how to get one. You know, and as far as I'm concerned, I wasted a good year, you know, of change. I maybe could have had this revelation sooner, you know. I know what someone's thinking, I'm right where I should be, right? I'm right where I should be right now, right? Okay, I can deal with that, you know. I'm going to keep coming back. Thank you, Sharon.
Is there anyone else who'd like to share? Okay, then I guess we'll end the workshop with group hug and serenity prayer.